Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers. We are gearing up for a big primetime matchup Thursday night football in the Superdome as the Saints host the Denver Broncos. You can watch that game on Amazon Prime, but it will also be available on WDSU here locally. Of course, if you're coming out to the game, make sure you download the Saints app presented by Verizon, switch over to Dome mode, log into your NFL.com account because there is a ton of information there on how to get through the new Superdome, all the exciting stuff they have going on after the renovations, and you can keep up with your favorite players throughout the game. You can track highlights, big plays, stats. So that is a lot of info that you'll want to have at your fingertips during the game. Not only is this matchup on the field going to be really exciting, but at halftime, legendary quarterback Drew Brees is going to be honored in a ceremony inducting him into the Saints Hall of Fame. He has just had a huge impact on this franchise and the city. This is the first of what will probably be a much bigger Hall of Fame announcement down the road, but we are really excited about welcoming into the Saints Hall of Fame, and we know the fans are going to get behind it. We're encouraging fans to wear black. We're going to have a Black Thursday blackout, and everybody that goes to the game is going to get a Drew Brees rally towel. A lot of opportunities to get fired up for this big matchup. To help me break down everything that is going to happen Thursday night, from the hoopla and the fanfare surrounding the game to what's actually going to take place in the game, we're bringing in James Palmer. He's one of the best and has covered the NFL for a very long time. I really enjoyed getting to talk to him today.
James, thanks for joining me on the New Orleans Saints podcast. It's awesome to have you back. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a minute, Erin. It's been a minute, but it's happy to be back. Happy to be chatting some football with you. Let's do this.
I know you are holding down the fort in Denver, been following the greater NFL for a long time. How have you seen this Broncos team evolve under head coach Sean Payton?
Well, it's been a lot of coaches over the last couple of years before Sean Payton got there. And I think what you've seen, first and foremost is the way Sean runs a program, the way he kind of gets his personality going throughout the building as a whole. He's got a lot of power in Denver. And I think what we saw in his first year with a quarterback that didn't mesh with him real well, that we obviously saw how quickly they parted ways, but they still won games, right? And the issues that they've had over the last couple of years with the previous, head coaches, it was a lot of mistakes, a lot of mental mistakes, clock management issues, things like that. A lot of that's cleaned up by a coach that's coached as many games as Sean Payton has won as many games as he's won. And, they have their issues talent-wise, personnel-wise. He's kind of flipping that roster right now, but what they have built, I think, is something special in terms of character, camaraderie, behind-the-scenes thing with a young group that is bought in. That's Sean's imprint for sure. Now they're just trying to find some more talent on the roster, I would say, as Sean's building this thing.
As Saints fans and the organization can understand what Payton does as far as building a culture there. And I think that's one reason why it's so interesting to have this game, a Thursday night matchup with Coach Payton coming back to the Superdome, back on the sidelines, albeit the opposite sideline. But he has a lot of the former Saints as coaches with him, as players with him. So there's that aspect of it of coming back to a place where you played for a long time for him, the coaches, and the players. How do you think that will affect them when they get into the Superdome?
I think it'll be awkward. I do, but I think it goes away pretty quickly, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, everything's backwards. Sean's like, he said this week to us in Denver, like, I haven't really been in that visiting locker room. I mean, like, it's kind of everything's just reversed. But I mean, I think when the whistle blows, it'll be fine. I think pregame, he'll be kind of looking around a little bit. He's going to have a lot of people in the stands. I think his wife's taking care of like roughly 20 some tickets or something. Obviously, you mentioned the carryover. He knows that staff and, so well, so many guys on New Orleans side. And he brought so many guys from New Orleans with him to this Broncos team. There's going to be a lot of, I would say, conversations post-game on the field when they're done playing, maybe a few pregame. But Sean and everybody in New Orleans knows this. I mean, like, pregame and in-game, he is like alter ego, like super focused, like can be a bit aggressive and you know, and intimidating to a lot of people. I don't see that changing. Honestly, I think that's the guy he's going to be, because I think he wants to win this game bad. And I think really bad. And so he's not expecting a lot of roses and flowers and whatnot. We'll see what the reception will be. One of my favorite places to cover a game. That crowd definitely lets you know very quickly how they feel. And I think we're all kind of curious about how the opening portion of that game is going to go, and how the New Orleans Saints fans feel about Sean Payton.
I think things might be a little bit different had the Saints continue the trajectory they were on at the beginning of the season, and they weren't dealing with so many injuries right now, because the Saints desperately need a win as well. So that is definitely the main focus for them, because you would think, head coach Dennis Allen would like to go get one on his former boss, right? And there would be
of course.
so many more, fun storylines, but the main focus right now is getting a win for both of these teams. What do you think Denver has to do, or what are they looking to do against the Saints?
There's really one thing, Aaron, honestly. It's getting out to a faster start. I mean, they've been abysmal in the first half of games. I mean, it's been almost embarrassing type of offense in the first half of games. So when I say get out to a faster start, that's offensively. The defense has been outstanding all year. This is one of the best defenses in football. Now, they're playing without Patrick Surtain, and they play a lot of man, and their defense is really based off of, in my opinion, the best corner in football, and maybe a top 3 defensive player in football, maybe top 2 now that Aiden Hutchinson is out, sadly. So he's that important to this defense, but the defense is outstanding top to bottom. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the toss, if they take the football. They did that down in Tampa because they wanted to try to be aggressive and get out to a better start. That's the only good first half they've had all season. I mean, they can't get really anything going. Your quarterback has -7 passing yards, I think it was, against a team in the first half. I know the weather was an issue with the Jets, but it was an issue. And so they need to find a way to be better offensively in the first half. I think they'd like to get out, run the ball better, help out Bo Nix, maybe have some explosive plays drawn up. But the first half has been so bad. And that's what they need to change. And that's been their focus, to my understanding, last week and really on this short week as well.
All right, so Saints cannot let them gain momentum early in this one. Got that. Without Pat Surtain in this game, how do you even begin to fill in for what he does on the defensive side?
Yeah, you really can't, honestly, because there's nobody else in the league that really can do what he does. And the way that Vance Joseph has built this defense, a guy who deserves a lot of credit for the way he's playing with this team, because I would say people in New Orleans could probably name Patrick Surtain, and that's the end of the list on this defense. Like, really, like there's a lot of guys that are really good players, that are good players. They're not household names.
I was going to go like Bo Nix would be the other person that could name the best offense.
Yeah, exactly. And so like on the defense, I mean, there's just there's good players. Zach Allen's outstanding up front. They got a really good defensive line. But so much of what they do is based off of a star corner. And that's not normal really in the NFL. He shadows #1 wide receivers, and that doesn't happen that often in the NFL, because everybody else has to communicate and move around, right? As Pat moves from one side to the other, everybody else kind of shifts and moves. The communication's really good. I mean, what helps the Broncos is the Saints are without their top 2 weapons. So, I mean, that kind of helps them out a little bit. But Jaquan McMillan, who's one of the best slot corners in football, nobody knows his name. He's outstanding. He's going to have to play on the outside in place of Patrick Surtain. So now you got, your best player out, probably your second best player on defense is going to play out of position. And that kind of changes some things on what you want to do as a defense. What I do think is the defensive line and the amount of blitzes that they bring. They're one of the most heavy blitzing teams in the NFL. The defense line gets pressure. And I know with the Saints having a banged up offensive line, which is been a real bummer. I mean, I'm a big Clint Kubiak fan. I love the way he designs plays. I thought that, the way they came out of the gate was outstanding. It's hard to keep that up with all the injuries they're dealing with. And so they're going to need to protect Spencer Rattler, because this group on defense in the front 7 can really get after it. And they can really provide a lot of pressure. I wouldn't be surprised if New Orleans moves Rattler quite a bit, gets him outside of the pocket a little bit, because this D-line is really just, it's aggressive. And Vance Joseph's going to stay aggressive even without Pat Surtain, because I don't think you have receivers that are as talented as the top 2 that New Orleans has. They're not playing for you.
I mean, it is going to be a lot of younger receivers, and Bub Means, who's another rookie, as well as Mason Tipton, who's gotten some playing time, but he was undrafted. And, they always say it's next man up, but you're not the man because you don't have the experience, or you're not that yet, whatever it may be. So it'll be interesting to see, how the Saints make adjustments on offense. You mentioned Clint Kubiak. I'm sure you're familiar with his
Yeah.
father, and just the whole coaching tree there. What did you like about that hire?
It's a system if it's done right that's been established. We all say it's Mike Shanahan, but Gary Clint's dad is right up there with the reasons why this system is so prevalent across the NFL, and guys can make it their own. And I think what I love about Clint is he's able to play so much of deep shots off of heavy personnel. You can put multiple tight ends in and still go down the field because of the way this is designed. I mean, I was in Houston as a beat reporter, an eternity ago, covering Gary Kubiak when he was the head coach there. And I remember watching these plays that were, designed off of an Arian Foster, such a good zone runner. Put Alvin Kamara in that spot, such a good zone runner to find his spots when the offensive line is playing well. And then there would be Owen Daniels at the tight end spot just running free when everything's played off of this great play action game and the ability to get people going downfield in one direction and you could throw back the other and create space. And I think he was really rolling. Like, I was talking to some people around the league that were just, hey, this is something we got to keep an eye on, because he was also helping out Derek so much, because he was getting that max protect in there that where Derek, if he's clean, he can sling it with the best of them still in this league. And so it was working. It was all working, and it was working off of the run. But like, when you lose the number of guys in the O-line that they did and things like that, it changes a lot. And I think he has to adjust again, sadly, to what he wants to try to accomplish with this offense. But yeah, if they get some guys back, I think we'll start seeing it again, because it's just designed so well. And he's been kind of around it since he was a kid. And he's been around Kyle Shanahan, and he's been around his dad. He's been around all these guys up in Minnesota. He was there. He was in Denver. He's been all over the place. And he's a really good young offensive mind that I think is on a lot of people's radar right now. And I think it was like the under the radar hire. But when it happened, and then you saw the first two games, everybody around the league does the normal thing where they go, "Oh yeah. I knew he'd be great," right? Like,
Yeah. He's definitely done a good job, even with the injuries, helping to scheme things around that and get the O-line ready to go. The way that quarterback Spencer Rattler was able to be productive in his first ever NFL time was impressive as well. You're going to have two rookie quarterbacks going at it. It's going to be a fun element to this game. Obviously, Nix has a little more experience. He's played in every game so far this season. But what do you think we're going to see from that matchup, and then just Rattler getting his second game?
Yeah, I think it's fun to see these two, because honestly, I know there were 150 picks apart. I think it is. That's not the talent difference. Honestly, that's not the talent difference. Because what do you need, right? You need one team to pick you. I think the Broncos, honestly, were the only team that was going to pick Bo Nix in the first round. I think that's the case. During the draft process, I have like probably 8 or 9 quarterback evaluators. I love to bug and get their take on all these quarterbacks. These two were so close in a lot of those guys' minds. Really, they were kind of put in the same group. Like, the Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler group was like the next group down after a couple of those superstars that we're seeing playing really, really well out of the gate, and Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. And we saw some flashes from Drake May. But like, that next group down in a lot of evaluators' minds, Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler were right there. Like, right there next to each other. And they, there were some teams, I think Atlanta worked them out together. And like, so they all saw a lot of similarities between both of these guys. I think they're both really confident. I think they both don't get rattled a whole lot. I think playing a ton in college, playing in multiple college programs, I think benefited both of them because they've had some adversity. I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't understand when a star in college comes into the NFL. Look at, like, say, CJ Stroud or Bryce Young is a perfect example. You haven't had a whole lot of adversity. You've won most of your games. Like, you're playing, with really good guys around you at these programs like Ohio State or Alabama. And they always wonder how you handle adversity. And that's a fear with a lot of programs, right? Because the NFL is a different animal, man. Every week it's going to be brutal. I think both these guys have had that adversity already in college. And talking to people around the league, it's like, that's a benefit. You know what I mean? They've been through some stuff before. And I think they know that won't rattle them. And I think you saw that in Spencer Rattler. Like, he could have folded last week, right? And I think you still saw that, the numbers he was able to put up and the way they were able to kind of push themselves back into the game. I know these are two of the best special teams units in football, which is going to be super fun and seldom talked about. Two really good special teams units. But yeah, I think what you saw from Spencer in his first start is exactly what I'm talking about, right? He's been through a lot. I think that's the way Bo's played too. He doesn't get, his competitiveness is through the roof. Like I mentioned, those slow starts, it hasn't bothered him in the second half. And I think that's why it's going to be fun to watch this game for a full 60 minutes, because neither one of them are going to just, if adversity hits, kind of fold because of what they've already been through.
Sure. I mean, Bo Nix down 20-0 at halftime against the Chargers last week. And then Spencer 17-0 really quick in the game
very
against
quick.
the Bucs. And neither of them, did flinch, really. They kind of just kept at it and got their team back in the game. If you look at the Broncos team overall and you think about Coach Payton, you think they're going to be an offensive team because that's what Coach Payton does really well. But they've been led by the defense. How do you think the offense is coming along? Do you see what we're used to from a Coach Payton offense starting to be developed?
You hope. If you're a Broncos fan, you hope. Because, I mean, this offense, let's be honest, is like towards the bottom of the league in almost all the categories. And in the first half, we mentioned it, they're like last or second to last in almost everything, in like yards and points, yards per play, all these things. I think what you're seeing is like, okay, I know what Sean does. We saw it be extremely successful with Drew Brees for an eternity. And that's going to be a nice little wrinkle too, halftime. It's going to be awesome with Drew down there. But like, it's a short, quick passing game. We know that. But he's averaging like one of the fewest yards per attempt in the NFL. Like it's really, really tight. They don't have any shots. And I think because the run game has been really lackluster, Bo Nix is like probably their best running threat. Honestly, that's how bad the running back room has been. They've been really shuffling guys in and out. Keep an eye on Audric Estime, their fifth round pick out of Notre Dame. They really, really like him. He was on IR after week 1, came back last week. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some more carries to try to get this running game going. And I think that's what's been lacking, is like there hasn't been a play, the ability to play the pass game off of the run game. They haven't really been able to take a whole boatload of shots. And I think I'll be honest, like, it's not like it's the most talented group of skill players. Like it's a lot of good players. But there's not like a superstar wide receiver. Courtland Sutton's a good player, but there's not like a superstar wide receiver. They're not really getting any production out of their tight end spot. Greg Dulcich was supposed to be that guy. And we all know the term joker with a Sean Payton offense, right? He used to have Jimmy Graham as the joker. He's had he thought that was going to be Greg Dulcich. The guy's been a healthy scratch the last 2 weeks. And so they haven't been able to find the guys that are going to make plays for Nix. And Nix has been out there making a lot of plays with his legs. You're seeing some of the rookies come on. Troy Franklin, who was his teammate at Oregon, the wide receiver, is starting to get some more snaps. I mention these rookies because this is a really interesting take. Everybody in New Orleans knows about the 2017 draft that Sean Payton had. I mean, it's like one of the best drafts we've ever seen in the NFL. He's made some comparisons to this year's draft in Denver to that draft in New Orleans. I was kind of like, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, that's a lot of pressure on these kids. That draft turned out just unbelievable players. I mean, it's one of the best drafts we've ever seen, with Kamara and company and all the, the offensive line help and all these, just really good players. He thinks that's the way this rookie class that he has this year is going to be. We haven't seen it yet. Jonah Ellis on defense has been okay. But Devon Vele and Troy Franklin, I would keep an eye on those guys, 2 rookie wide receivers that they want to get more snaps, and they're starting in these 2 weeks to get more snaps. But man, he wants these young guys to play, and I was kind of like, do we remember everybody in that class? Like, I kind of want to pull it up. Like, I mean, to that group, like, let me just look through it. It's like, what is it like? Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Alvin Kamara, Alex Alonzi, like Trey Hendrickson. Like, this is an unbelievable draft class. And they have high hopes for this group in Denver. At least Sean does. If they live up to that, he's on the right track, I guess.
Yeah. Why are you so excited about these special teams?
Nobody talks about special teams, right? The dynamic kickoff, which hasn't been very dynamic.
We talk about it a lot because of Coach Rizzi.
Okay, yeah, all right, good. I mean, it's just because like it is an aspect of the game that I think is somewhat overlooked. I mean, like, let's be honest, like this might be rude, but like a lot of times when like I go to all these different facilities around the league, special teams coordinator comes up, like everybody's like, oh, I'm gonna go work the locker room, and like half the media group like leaves, and I'm like, this is an extremely important part of the game. I mean, this is Will Lutz actually coming back to New Orleans, and who's kicking for Sean. And so you can steal points. I really think you can. You saw how quickly New Orleans was able to get back in the game last week. I mean, you can help your team in a lot of different ways. And I think that's the fun part, right? Like special teams plays can change the momentum of a game. They can quickly, as we saw like in New Orleans last week, like it can quickly change the course of a score. And so I just think the value of special teams varies by building. It's kind of like value of linebackers varies by building for some reason, but like these teams value it and they're good at it and the position game. And I think with both these young quarterbacks that have had their struggles, right? I mean, we've only seen one game from Spencer Rattler, but we've seen with young quarterbacks getting your offense going can be tough at times. Well, if you're starting your drive inside your own 5, which is like what Denver does to a lot of people in the punt game, it's hard. It's difficult, and especially as a young quarterback. And so I just think it's going to be extremely big because of both the quarterbacks and because how both teams are really good at this.
Yeah, it was funny this week in the locker room. I was looking at Blake Grupe and I was thinking back to the kicking battle between him and Will Lutz. And is there going to be some feelings there between the kickers? And
they're out there early.
The quarterbacks going at it, and they never actually are on the field together, and neither are the kickers. But you had Lutz that was there for so long, coming back to this place and seeing the little kid on the other side of the field.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, think about it. Like everybody's saying, New York is collapsing right now with the Jets Monday night loss. Like you make a couple of those kicks, you don't lose that game. What have the Chiefs been able to do better than anybody else in football over the last several years? Yes, you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but like it's a close game in the end. They make the kicks. They get down the field. They have one of the best special teams coordinators in Dave Tobe, and like they make plays and they know they're going to win because their special teams are really good. And so like it is extremely important. And so I'm excited to kind of see these units go back and forth because they can make plays. They definitely can make plays.
Are they going to be lining up further and further on the field to see like who can kick the furthest field goal before the game starts? Like
that usually happens. You got to see what you can do, right?
Yeah.
And you can look over at the other guy, see where he's at.
You mentioned the atmosphere in the Superdome, but it's a primetime game. Payton's back. Drew Brees is getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. They're trying to have a blackout. They're bringing the rally towels because apparently Sean Payton doesn't like rally towels. So there's all of these elements
That's surprising.
Like that are getting thrown in that have nothing to do about the actual game. How do you think that's going to affect things?
We mentioned young quarterbacks. I mean, you've been in there a million times. I've been there a ton. Like it's hard to play there. It is hard. There are very few places I think in the NFL where home field advantage is actually a real thing. I think it's overstated some places. This is one of them where it's an actual real thing. And I think if you need to get off to a better start, if you're Denver, like you're going to probably have to do it with a silent count, inability to communicate, inability to hear anything really, and can Bo Nix play out of that? Like, so I think there is a small aspect that can affect the game in some capacity for sure. But also you're right. Like the part that's not connected to the game, like I am curious, like what the Sean Payton reception is going to be. I mean, everybody is going to be very curious about it. I mean, let's be honest, it's a very like complicated tenure there in New Orleans, with also a lot of success on the field and wins. And so I'm anxious to see what the reception will be. I think we all know what halftime's going to be like. But I think coming out of the gates, this might be one of those games where it's like, oftentimes at home, you can't tell. This might be one of the games at home you're like, yeah, I can tell the roof's ready to blow off this place.
Right. We'll be able
opening
to feel
kickoff.
The energy
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Defensively for the Saints, it's kind of been an anomaly this past couple games where they've 594 yards allowed against the Bucs. That was one thing that Coach Dennis Allen said, has to be fixed is their tackling. They're allowing these explosive plays or their runners to get into the secondary. He said he is very confident. His track record speaks for itself. How much does he want to prove that, especially in this game?
I think it's a huge thing. I mean, I think that's massive. I mean, he knows Sean's offense. They've coached together for a number of years. He was there, then left, then came back. And it's been this long tenured relationship. That's one of the biggest things as a defensive coach that you want to prove to your opponent, especially if you know them well. And it's your former colleague and your former boss. Like, not tackling well is embarrassing. Like it's something you don't want as a coaching staff at all. I think they can tackle better. I think people in New Orleans know that they can tackle better. It's oftentimes something that you can flip a switch and get back to doing well. I think they can turn the football over. I don't think Denver creates a lot of explosive plays, so that plays in their favor. This could be one of those get right games, right? Like those often are on your schedule where you're like, a coach is going into that week going like, this might be the game where we get it back, because Denver has struggled on offense. They can't really attack downfield all that well. They haven't been very good at it. You don't have a whole lot of playmakers, let's be honest, that you're really fearing coming into this game. And so Denver's had to kind of dink and dunk down the field in very methodical types of drives. And if you can tackle well and create some negative plays and a turnover or two, Bo Nix has had turnover issues. I think that's a way you get yourself back on track. And maybe it's playing this offense that isn't, humming right now in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game that the Saints need badly. I know that the Broncos come in also would love to get a win here, short week, and then have some time off before your next game. So it is going to be a very interesting game. And I really appreciate all of your insight and input into what do you think is going to happen. It's going to be fun to watch. Definitely.
It's been a good conversation. When's the last time we did this? It's been a minute. I don't know. Yeah. Well, you're the one who makes the phone calls, Erin, but okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. Fine. I'm just going to, every time I need a guest, I'm going to be like, hey, James.
I'm ready. Okay. Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, and congratulations. You've got your own podcast going now with Steve Smith, right?
Yeah, we got one. Actually, if you want to go back and you want to feel good about yourself as a Saints fan, we did a really big breakdown on Clint's offense, I think after week 2 on Steve Smith and I's podcast, because Steve played for Gary in Baltimore, and he knows the offense inside and out, and he knows what Clint's doing really, really well. It was great to hear his insight on why things can go well with this offense, the way Clint's calling it. But yeah, it's been a blast. I mean, he's one of my best friends, and you never know what Steve's going to say. So that's the fun part about it. But yeah, it's been super fun. Him and I doing our 89 podcast. It's been a blast.
Okay, where can we find that?
It's on. I mean, I think we were smart by doing this using Steve's number. If you just type 89 into YouTube, that's fine. I think you type 89 into Spotify or Apple, you'll see all of it, because we have our own channel like on YouTube where we kind of break everything up if you want, and then you can listen to it too if you don't want to see our faces. I think we're adorable together personally out there. So if you want to watch it on YouTube, you can, but if you want to just listen, I guess it's like if you type in 89 on Spotify or Apple, you'll totally get it.
Awesome. All right. We'll have to do that for sure. Thank you so much.
No problem.
James mentioned cornerback Pat Surtain being out with that concussion for this game. Also out for the Broncos is their offensive tackle, Alex Pazuski. For the Saints, there will be no Cesar Ruiz, Pete Werner, Rashid Shaheed, or Chris Olave. Taysom Hill and Derek Carr are listed as doubtful, although it does look like quarterback Spencer Rattler is going to be playing. They're just starting to ramp Carr back up. He started week to week as far as his injury status goes, and head coach Dennis Allen said that it's more like day to day now. Listed as questionable is left guard Lucas Patrick, which would be good to get him back. He was a non-participant in what would have been Monday's practice, but has been limited the rest of the week as he is coming back from a chest injury and did miss this past game. Also listed as questionable, popped up on the injury report yesterday as he did not practice, was defensive tackle Colin Saunders, who's dealing with a back injury. Hopefully it's just a little tightness and they can get that worked out for the game. It is a quick turnaround for everybody in this one. Players were back at the facility 11 a.m. this morning for a walkthrough, and then they are headed to the stadium tonight for a game. So a lot to cram in a short amount of time. One thing is for sure, the players are really excited about getting back on the field, righting some of the wrongs from this past couple games, and getting back in that win column. So we will see you there tonight. 7:15 is kickoff. 6:15, John DeShazer and myself will be on NewOrleansSaints.com with your pregame show. We will have all the last details you need to know before this game. We will see you there then. Thank you so much for listening, and go Saints.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.